And then, which I think toxic masculinity, at least the way I see it, is it's taking those masculine traits that we all recognize to the extreme.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not that it's bad to be strong or to be what else? Strength, courage, independence, disciplines, stoicism, leadership, protection, providing. Like they're not in and of themselves bad qualities, right? But when that strength turns into dominance, you know, when that discipline turns to abuse or you know, leadership is just your whatever. I can't think of a bad well, or you're leading down the wrong path or something. You know?
There's leadership that inspires people to follow you, and then there's leadership that
a fear.
Yeah, and if you can inspire people to follow you by your example, right, then they're going to try to emulate those qualities that you have, right? And unfortunately, you can pick a bad example, right? And I think a lot of what's happened is that as the old John Wayne sort of idea of what a man is has been stripped away, right? That, yeah, you know, the rugged outdoorsman, you know, kind of thing, there's a sort of a mythic pull to that, I guess. But at the same time, you know, the voices that particular image had crushed, right? The indigenous voices, the women, the minorities that had been excluded out of that, you know, those voices start coming up and start saying, well, yeah, some of those things are good, but there's a lot that's attached to that that's not so good. And there's a reaction, right? And it's sort of, in my mind, like the toxic masculinity is a reaction against that. It's saying, well, if these things are good, then more of them would be better, right? Like if strength is good, then being really strong is got to be better. And it's like,
Right.
you know, then somehow or another, we always keep circling back to Aristotle, but Aristotle was the golden mean. You know, like the place between the two extremes is where you want to try to be, and that's the whole cultivation of virtue, personal virtue.
Yeah,
being able to know when it's time to like be assertive and when it's time to, you know, step back a little bit and let somebody else have something. So, did you have something? It looked like
I just it's kind of like it kind of ties into what I was saying a second ago, but it's kind of like a little breakdown of like examples of toxic masculinity versus healthy masculinity.
Oh, okay, give me a couple.
So you have toxic masculinity, we kind of touched on, would be dominance over others, whereas healthy masculinity is leadership through respect, which is, we kind of touched on that.
Right.
Also, this one is I like this one because it definitely hits home with me. Emotional suppression versus emotional regulation. So toxic masculinity is you're just suppressing them instead of really, whereas a more healthy view of masculinity would be, you know, recognizing your emotions and trying to, I guess, regulate them as opposed to just saying, pushing them down, you know, which I tend to do a lot, you know.
Damn it. Emotional regulation. All right. I want to say that was in Christine Webb too, in The Arrogant Ape. She was talking about emotional regulation in there. But that also triggered something that was in a different book that I picked up. You know what I realized? That my style of reading right now has been really heavily influenced by 20 years on the internet. Because in the same way that I'll have a browser open with like 12 tabs, I have like, you know, 7 or 8 books that I'm reading.
Right.